Well, Ukrainian kids now have something new to play with when they go to a toy store. Ukraine this week launched its new toy line. This seems fun. Take a look at this. This is the AFU fighter Oksanka with a prosthetic leg and a Ukrainian flag on her chest. So little kids can now dream of growing up and dying in NATO's proxy war, or just have a leg blown off in battle. That's for the future of Ukraine. This comes as a new report out this morning shows the size and scope of Ukraine's cemeteries has more than doubled in recent months. Just look at these images. Just take a step back when you think about the warmongers in Washington, D.C. and NATO and the European Union who want more of these people to die. Look, all of the extra space that they've made available. Look at that right there on your screen, the left side of your screen. That's for the many thousands of people that will continue to die unless this ends soon. It's an absolute disaster. The Time magazine just published a brand new interview with Ukrainian dictator Zelensky, and it's pretty damn revealing.
First I'll go through this part because this is the part that made me absolutely nuts. They say, well, he doesn't really like all the gold decor in the nation's capital, but he has one room where he goes to chill out and relax, and it has paintings that he picked himself. Take a look at them. They feature the Kremlin on fire, a Russian battleship sinking, and his people at war inside the Russian borders. And he says this Kremlin on fire one is his favorite. That's not normal. This is not a guy who cares about life, you guys. This is a guy who cares about death. So let's bring in Colonel Douglas Macgregor now to talk about all of these revelations in this Time magazine article about him basically admitting now that, you know what, Ukraine is done. The only way we survive is if the West steps up. He hopes that Europe will be the ones to step up and really fund and supply weapons to continue this senseless war. Colonel, good to see you. Welcome back to the show. Just first, your thoughts on this Time magazine interview with Zelensky.
Well, my thoughts about most interviews with Zelensky are not very positive. The man is a pathological liar. And so it's difficult to accept much of what he says, though I admit you're correct. That he's finally talking about the losses and the destruction of his country, which, in my judgment, is largely his fault. Now, you will recall, because you were one of the few people that was interviewing me some time ago when this war got off to a start, and I started reporting the tremendous losses the Ukrainians were taking. And everybody said, oh, no, that's a lie. He's working for Putin or something. And then they were attributing these losses the Ukrainians were taking to the Russians. Well, now at least we have the true picture, and you're showing it, and it needs to be shown to people, because this has been a terrible, terrible disaster for Ukraine. Russia, of course, has suffered. It's paid a price. It's lost 100,000 Russians, probably 10,000 Chechens on top of that. But those losses are almost minuscule when you figure that somewhere is between 1.2 million and 1.5 million Ukrainian soldiers have been killed. And this man, Zelensky, is the principal obstacle to peace. I mean, the man that obviously conducted this interview isn't aware of it. But the discussions that are going on between us and the Russians in Riyadh are going very well. And we're getting down into details. We're going to iron things out. The only thing that stands between the normalization of relations with Moscow and disaster right now is, of course, Zelensky. He wants disaster. We want normalization. So I plead with the president, whenever he's listening, exercise your power and authority, remove Zelensky. Get rid of this man. This man is a danger to all of us. And as soon as he's out of the picture, all the things that the president wants to see happen, an ending to the killing, a ceasefire, agreements, all of those things will happen. But you've got to get Zelensky out of the picture.
Right. And so one of the things that kills me about this article is that the author says, well, I met him last year in Switzerland when he was pitching his peace plan. And this quote, some of its demands struck his allies as fanciful, and no one expected Ukraine to achieve all of these goals, certainly not anytime soon. Well, that's nice of them to admit a year later after people have already died. So I wanted to throw my computer the fact that the mainstream media is now admitting that this has always been Zelensky's ego project to the death of thousands. Oh, but we knew that all along. No, they didn't. How can they say that? They've been lying to us.
Well, I think you're hitting the key point, and that is, yes, they were lying to us because, truthfully, behind the scenes, I'm sure they knew the truth, and they were told to lie, and they readily lied. This was the whole narrative problem that Clayton has talked to many of his guests about. You can go back to Mike Krupa and talk about this sort of thing. The truth was out there, but no one wanted the truth, and so the lie took over, and everybody accepted it. The media accepted it, not just here, but all across Europe. Now suddenly they say, well, we knew these were fanciful aspirations. Hundreds of thousands of people are dead as a result of fanciful aspirations. And of course, the main culprits are, of course, Biden and his administration, but also the people in London and Paris and Berlin and the other major capitals that maintained the fiction. And anybody who challenged it was a traitor, was somehow or another selling out his country. It's crazy.
Or just a betrayal to this myth that was Zelensky. This line also made me crazy that they need to make sure that there is some kind of peace agreement that Zelensky will not find too humiliating. Who the hell cares how he feels? So people have to die so he's not humiliated? What the hell kind of journalism is
Kid gloves,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm ranty,
ridiculous.
but I'm pissed.
No, Natalie, you're 100% right. And that's why this man needs to go away. And the president of the United States, who's presided over this disaster in the past, is being replaced. We have a new one. His name is Trump. He did not create this. This is not his responsibility. But he needs to act decisively to get out of this. And that means get rid of Zelensky and the gang of criminals that surround him. If he doesn't do it, very shortly, he's going to own this disaster. You know how Americans are. They only have so much patience.
Yeah.
He promised an end to this disaster. He's got to end it. To end it, you got to get rid of Zelensky.
Well, as an Eagles fan and a Philadelphia sports fan, I know it. We have a very thin amount of patience, and as soon as you screw up, as soon as you start underperforming, you're going to start hearing boos. And so you're right about that. I want to get your take on this, Colonel. So, a friend of the show, Eva Bartlett, one of the greatest journalists really in the world, she really shone a light on the pedal mines that were being used by Ukraine to attack and kill civilians. They were like these green little leaf-like pedal mines that would wind up in children's parks where they'd pick them up and they'd have their hands blown off or killed. Hundreds of people killed, civilians targeting this. Well, now here's their new strategy, these new grass mines, which are now meant to look like sort of chunks of grass, so that children can pick these up and they'll blow up. So they don't look like pedal mines anymore, but these are the new types of mines that Ukraine is launching into civilian areas in the People's Republic of Donetsk. So while these peace talks are going on in Riyadh, they're rolling out new strategies to target and kill civilians. Are you surprised?
No, because we tolerate it. Remember, we outlawed after Desert Storm the use of these DPCIM, IPCM munitions. These were little bomblets that looked like baseballs. And children in Iraq would find these on the ground, picked up the ball and throw it. The next thing you knew, it exploded and either killed the child or maimed the child for life. And so we went back and said, no, we're not going to produce these anymore. We're going to outlaw these. And then we discovered we had some of these remaining in the arsenal that had not been destroyed yet, and we shipped them to Ukraine. The Ukrainian leadership, this criminal government, is full of hatred. It hates in the plural, which is the worst kind of hatred. It's bad enough when one person hates another, but hating in the plural leads to disasters like the Holocaust during World War II and innumerable other places, Cambodia and so forth. This has got to stop. Zelensky is responsible. He's pushing this. His supporters in Washington are pushing this because it's all about hatred. That's another reason why President Trump's got to get involved and say, that's it, we're finished, they're out, we will do no more business with this regime, they must go.
I want to ask you, we both want to ask you about this signal leak before we let you get out of here, and also the Diego Garcia news over the past couple of hours. You probably have a lot more awareness about this, which is normally America has its B-2 bombers in America. Well, suddenly, over the past couple of days, there's been a huge influx of American bombers appearing in the atoll, the island of Diego Garcia, showing force to Iran, preparing for strikes against Iran. This comes on the heels of this signal leak, of course, that we saw with the attacks on the Houthi rebels in Yemen. So first on Diego Garcia and these bombers, what is your thought here? What are we positioning to do?
Well, first of all, nobody should know about this. And unfortunately, today in the world of satellite surveillance, it's very difficult to hide forces on the surface that move around, whether they're surface ships or aircraft or troops. But I am disappointed that this sort of thing is peddled by the media. If I were the Secretary of Defense, I would be furious. You know, this sort of thing should not be common knowledge. Now, what are they going to do? I think it's pretty clear, Clayton. This is all about Iran. You don't need to employ B-2 bombers to strike the Houthis in Yemen, for God's sakes. So this is very, very sophisticated aircraft designed to survive integrated air defenses at 35, 40,000 feet and bomb with precision. There's only one target set out there for which these would be useful to the United States at this point, and that is obviously Iran. Now, you know, I don't support this idea. I think this is a catastrophe. I don't think we should bomb anybody over this business right now. But unfortunately, we're not in charge. And this administration has played its cards and said, you know, we're the Israel First administration and we're going after Iran. So I think it's pretty obvious. Now, is this just a threat? Well, I don't think it's just a threat. I don't think it's a meaningless gesture. You don't move this kind of equipment. And this is the tip of the proverbial iceberg. This is what you see. Beyond that, there's a lot more firepower now that's being assembled in the region.
Now, we learned from this signal leak that it would seem that the person who was flying the aircraft was not the same person that was actually deploying the weapons, and that there was authorization to strike a civilian apartment because one of the targets was in it. That's usually not allowed, right? And so you're talking about war crimes in Ukraine, and then we are watching it play out in front of us. There were civilian deaths. Am I reading this correctly?
Natalie, I thought the clown show was over.
Yeah.
You know, when the election occurred and we got a new set of people, this is a clown show. First of all, these kinds of conversations are deplorable in any case for the reasons that you cite. The sort of cavalier attitude towards the loss of human life and celebrating the death of an individual that for some reason we decided we wanted to personally annihilate, which, as you point out, strictly speaking, we have laws against assassination, particularly of people in other governments. But having said all of that, putting this out on Signal is incomprehensible. We have encrypted networks. There's no reason that any discussion impinging on national security involving secrets, and some of this could be construed as, well, it's not strictly speaking classified. Well, hell, you've just revealed tremendous intentions. You've revealed what you are about, who is making these decisions. You're talking about the fact that Americans really don't know anything about the Houthis, so they don't understand why it's necessary for us to annihilate them from high altitude. These kinds of conversations are frightening, and they're amateurish and they're unprofessional. So I don't know what the president is going to do about any of it, if anything. But under the circumstances, I think someone should pay the price, whoever set this up. And I don't know how this man Goldberg, who is a card-carrying enemy of Donald Trump and the administration in general, would have ever been included in something like this. I haven't figured that out. If this is a hack, do we know that? If it's not a hack, who put the name on there? And why did that name show up there? The whole thing is incomprehensible. It makes this look clownish in the eyes of the whole world.
Right. Yeah. And, you know, Pete Hegseth can kind of downplay it and kind of spin it and say there's nothing classified in here and go back to peddling nonsense and propaganda, and that's fine. But at the heart of it, there's something really fishy with this and how this all unfolded. And it's really fishy in that it happened.
Senior levels, Clayton, when you get to senior levels like this, you're dealing with 4 stars. and secretaries of defense and vice presidents and national security advisors. And I've been on the periphery of some of these things. And I watched as a particular general officer was told to speak to the Secretary of Defense. And in came the man with the satellite phone and the encryption device and connected back to the Secretary of Defense in Washington. And then the Secretary of Defense came up on the net to talk to the general officer. All of that was encrypted. All of it was secure. And the conversation they had, in comparison with what we've heard about, Clayton, was modest. In other words,
Right.
This is back in the mid-'90s, and people would take no chances, none, that this kind of thing could ever go public.
It's not just goonery. It's wrong.
Yeah.
It's flat out wrong to, you're right, assassinate and have acceptable civilian targets. This is one of the things that turned most of us against Obama. So come on, guys.
You got to remember something else, that you're talking about a generation of people who are in charge right now. I exclude President Trump from that because he's not part of this generation. But if you look at the ages of these people, they don't have any real military experience. I'm sorry, but showing up for a few months in the National Guard and going on patrol or being in the public affairs office of the Marine Corps, these things do not prepare you to understand the gravity of the situation you're discussing. You're talking about the destruction, not just of property, but of human beings on a grand scale with weapons of mass destruction. And people say, well, that's not true. Well, I got news for you. A 2,000-pound bomb that is precision delivered is a weapon of mass destruction that will kill and annihilate everything. You start talking about these things and you don't have an appreciation for what's at stake, because there are consequences to our action. They're not limited to Yemen. They're not limited to Iran. These consequences can reach beyond the region. And this is the problem and the danger of a regional war. I don't think we understand, frankly, the consequences involved. I don't think we understand the implications. It frightens me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Frightens all of us. Colonel Douglas Macgregor, always great to see you. Thank you for your insights, as always, and being clear-headed in this, and right from the very beginning.
Okay.
Thanks, Colonel.
Good to see you. Bye-bye.